Women Australia podcast show, the podcast that brings together industry leaders to discuss the latest trends, insights and strategies. So sit back and relax, let's get inspired by the amazing women who are shaping the future of professional women in Australia. Don't forget to like and subscribe.
So welcome, you're listening to the BWA podcast show, Business Women Australia, and I am the National Director and Founder of Business Women Australia, Lynn Hawkins. It's great to have you here if you're listening to us live across any of our channels, across LinkedIn, across Meta, or if you're on YouTube, or you're catching up and listening to us on your favourite channel. We're on Spotify, iTunes, and all the other places you find your favourite podcasts. So great to have you all tuning in. We're unpacking menopause with Kirstin Bouse today. This is going to be a really interesting conversation and one that's long overdue. Kirstin's been a trailblazer in women's health for decades. I think nearly 3 decades of experience as a clinical and forensic psychologist. She's dedicated her career to empowering others, and she's now focusing on those navigating the challenges of menopause and building a community of medical practitioners who better understand the symptoms and the therapies. So we're really going to have a deep dive into menopause today and hear about Kirstin's latest groundbreaking initiative, all about her, the Centre for Menopause. Now, we all know how much menopause really does impact on us if we've been through it ourselves, but quite often those around us just see sort of the outward impacts. But there is a significant social and economic cost to menopause. There's been some studies, particularly recently in the UK, that estimated that menopause-related productivity loss costs employers around £7.3 billion annually. That's a lot of impact and a lot of cost. And that's not saying is how bad it is for the individuals that are actually experiencing it. So we're going to have a little bit of a look at how the current medical practices can be improved as well, supporting women going through menopause. Dr. Kirstin Bouse, she's a mother of 4. She's a passionate advocate for self-care, and she's dedicated herself over the years to helping others navigate emotional, psychological, and physical changes that accompany life. And now, of course, Kirstin, your focus is on perimenopause and menopause. I think I read somewhere that it's 7 years that are marked by this struggle of profound self-discovery, and we'll actually go through that a little bit in more depth later. But tell us about you and your career and sort of help us understand, where you're at with this latest venture.
Yeah. Gosh, I've been very fortunate to have had a really interesting career. And I guess the first half of my career was very much forensic. So yes, worked in prisons, child protection was a very big part of my world then, and family court kind of work as well. And so to be honest, I guess that's particularly child protection, working with mums who had sometimes their babies, if not their children, removed from their care, really meant in order to be able to, I guess, make these assessments to assist the court make a decision, I started to look at kind of perinatal mental health. Now, mums in the child protection system have a lot of psychosocial issues as well, but that perinatal kind of learning that I needed to do then kind of translated into working with the average woman who was moving into motherhood and that stage of her life. And I did that for a really, really long time. And what's interesting is because we are having children later, babies later, a lot of those women were starting, even with their first, but perhaps with their second or third, were kind of going through both the weirdness of hormones from postpartum and moving into perimenopause really quickly, and sometimes at the same time, because of having their babies later. And so that started to kind of, I guess, mean that I needed to educate myself about perimenopause and menopause. And then, of course, I hit that stage and did not know it. It's only in hindsight that I recognized that I'd been in perimenopause for a while. I had a hysterectomy, kept my ovaries if you don't keep your ovaries, you go straight into menopause. But if you do keep them, then you tend to start perimenopause substantially earlier. My doctor didn't mention it. The specialist didn't mention it. Even when I had symptoms and went back for support about those symptoms, they still didn't mention it. It took quite a few years, and it was really my own research that helped me understand what was going on for me. And so when I was trying to find people, health professionals, to support me in my journey, or my clients as well, I just found it ridiculously difficult to find people who had various, expertise in various health areas. The physios, the nutritionists, the naturopaths, all of those kinds of health providers. But finding them with that niche area, that real understanding, up-to-date understanding of peri and menopause and everything, was really difficult. And for me, that was like, this is nuts. I have to try and solve this problem. And so All About Her, that's really where the seed was sown, was to find a way to make it easier for women navigating these years, to get information, accurate evidence-based information, and also then to be able to find service providers more easily. But I have to say, what was interesting, I needed to find the health providers myself. If I was going to do this thing, I needed to be able to find them. And in my market research with a range of health providers, it will come as no surprise that they were also going through this stage of life, and they were finding it difficult, and they really wanted to make it easier for other women. But one of the things that I really discovered is that they needed a lot of support in terms of, they needed training, they needed professional development, they needed to learn a lot. They wanted a community of other health colleagues they could talk to about cases, about scenarios, learn from. And they also often were small business owners who perhaps had spent lots of time honing their craft, but weren't necessarily so business savvy. And so they were really looking for that kind of business development, branding, marketing support as well. And so All About Her became a platform and a business where the support is given to the health professionals. They become members of All About Her. And then when they get all the things that they get, then they're able to provide great services to the women. And hopefully we're getting more findable, as a terrible English word that I've made up, but you know what I mean.
Absolutely. I think, and is it just Australian based, or are you looking internationally to support practitioners?
I haven't ruled out internationally. Part of the reason at the moment it's Australian based is that as an AHPRA regulated professional, even at owning a business like this, there's quite a few restrictions on me as the founder and things. So at the moment we're looking at Australia. When I move internationally, I'll probably start with New Zealand because there's a lot of synergy and, kind of similarity there. And then we might look at going bigger and how I can manage that and not jeopardize my own professional kind of registration and things.
Absolutely. I mean, it just seems to be getting so much more conversation out in the open, the issues around menopause. I think there's, I was doing some research, after sort of catching up with you recently and hearing about your business, there seems to be so many more kind of people talking about it, people raising the issues. It's sort of not the taboo subject that it once was.
Yeah, and that's brilliant. I mean, it's definitely having its time in the sun. There've been researchers and professionals and practitioners working in this area very quietly, just beavering away for decades, for sure. But it hasn't, their knowledge and their expertise hasn't translated and been communicated to the wider community. And I think some recent research shows that the average Australian woman, about, kind of between 68 and 74% of Australian women had no idea they were in perimenopause for many, many years. So those are retrospectively when they've done surveys and of women who do know they're in perimenopause, that percentage said there was years before they knew what was going on. And we really need to change that. Perimenopause can actually, even natural perimenopause, because there's some differences when there's, I guess, medical menopause and surgical menopause and things like that. But natural perimenopause can begin in our late 30s, and it can span, 13, 14 years. It's a really long time. Menopause itself is actually only one day. It's one day it's the day 12 months after your last period, basically, is the day of menopause. And the next day, you're postmenopausal for the rest of your life. So if you're thinking that perimenopause starts around late 30s, early 40s, and the average mortality rate, I think, for women is in our 80s, we spend half our life in this stage of life. And it's really important for us to know more about it, and for the average woman to know more about it.
Well, that's quite revealing, really, isn't it, that it happens so young, because it was thought of as a middle-aged kind of issue. And I mean, it's quite extraordinary, here those women who have gone and had help and found out that they, are perimenopausal, feel like they're early, like that they're early.
Yes.
And what you're saying is that it's actually, that's how it is.
Well, the average Australian woman will hit that day of menopause at 51.
Yeah.
And that's what we used to just talk about. We just talked about menopause, but we actually know that there is this massive lead-in time of many, many years where our hormones are really fluctuating. And to be honest, that is the most challenging period of time typically. Once we're post-menopause, it's called E2, is our favorite. There's 3 types of estrogen. Our E2, which is the one that's most potent and is what we're producing during our fertile and reproductive years. When that's disappeared and we're just left with this other type of estrogen, not as potent, but we tend to find the symptoms and the challenges reduce. I mean, our risks of heart disease, Alzheimer's, dementia, osteoporosis, and a whole bunch of things increase after 50 because we've not got this juicy estrogen. And that's another part of a conversation. But certainly the most difficult time symptom-wise is in the lead up to that day of menopause. And that, as I said, can span a really long period of time.
And what about the fact that, we've got so many different choices around birth control with, implants, as pills, whatever, do some of those have different impacts on the type of sort of perimenopausal onset?
I don't think it has. I'm not sure, and I probably shouldn't comment on that, answer that specific question. But what I can say is sometimes our contraceptive measures can kind of manage the symptoms of perimenopause. And so I know, having had a lot of kind of clients who've had a Mirena, for example, and they may well start to, kind of reach ages where perimenopause is very likely. And most of the time they've been told, and I don't know this, the ins and outs of their health condition or anything, but most of the time a GP wouldn't necessarily say take the Mirena out, until it's due to come out just of its own accord, because it can be a way to manage some of the symptoms. But something like a Mirena does have to come out at some point, and that might be when they need to be looking at alternative ways of managing, should they choose. I mean, there's a range of things women can do to support themselves through this period of time.
And what are the symptoms of perimenopause? What are the things that women are having to be challenged by?
Yeah. I mean, there's kind of 3 main categories, and that's kind of physical symptoms, cognitive symptoms, and psychological symptoms. Interestingly, most people, if they've heard of menopause, would associate it with hot flushes and night sweats. And why I say interestingly is because those are vasomotor symptoms, and they actually tend to occur closer to the day of menopause. Now, when I say closer to the day of menopause, if your perimenopause is like 10 years, which you never know up front, it might happen in those last few years before you actually hit menopause. The symptoms that tend to show up first are more our mood and our cognitive functioning. So this is where we start to feel like our brains, the cogs are turning far more slowly. We're trying to think through cotton wool, that's some of the descriptions that I've certainly been given. Brain fog is talked about, word finding. Those are the cognitive kind of challenges. And then in terms of the psychological, that's when women will start to report that they're feeling more overwhelmed more easily. They feel their resilience has reduced. They're probably getting a bit tetchy and cranky more easily. And their mood might have dropped a bit as well. And for some women, their anxiety, they feel anxious for the first time in their life, or their anxiety really, really increases. So they're actually more common at the beginning of the journey. And, midlife women are really busy. And so those symptoms can easily be attributed to burnout, to stress, to doing too much, all of those kinds of things. But those things can coexist. You can be burnt out and also be perimenopausal, but sometimes just saying it's burnout is an incomplete picture of actually what's going on. And they are actually the ones that also are typically reported as the most challenging. So I appeared and gave evidence at the Senate inquiry in Perth. So there's been a massive inquiry into menopause nationwide, and myself and some GPs here and a policy writer, we put a submission in collectively, and then we were invited to appear. And I've listened to some of the other hearings around the country, and the consistent theme was really the most challenging symptoms of menopause were those related to the psychological and cognitive functioning of women. And we really need to take that on board.
Yeah, it's very serious, isn't it? Because it isn't something that we have generally focused on. As you've said earlier on, you alluded to the fact that we tend to focus on the physical symptoms. I think too, we've generally as society made light of it. I mean, it's been the subject of great comedians and some fantastic shows that we can all enjoy and laugh at. Yeah. But the reality is it's actually not a laughing matter. For so many women, it can be quite debilitating.
Yeah, I think the stats, kind of, they change from time to time, but I would say around 3/4 of women will find perimenopause moderately, the symptoms either to have a moderate or severe impact on their lives. And that could be a range of things. And by no means am I disputing the importance of the physical symptoms. I've met women who are having 40 to 50 hot flushes a day. It's just awful. And fatigue is the other one that is really, really, really common as well. Sleep disruption. There's definitely some really serious physical kind of consequences and symptoms associated with this stage of life. And, how can these things not impact, I don't know, how we feel about ourselves and how we navigate our lives, how we navigate our relationships. A lot of women will just say some of the most common phrases I hear are, "I just don't feel like myself. I don't know where the woman I was has gone. She's just gone. I can't find her at all. I don't know what I want anymore. I'm so overwhelmed so easily. That's not like me. I could juggle a million things before. I'm worried I'm losing my mind." And sometimes that's in reference to the mood issue. Sometimes that's in reference to the cognitive challenges. It's a significant stage of life. And, on the one hand, it's a natural stage of life. If we live long enough, we're all going to go through it. So, I don't want to make it sound like it's a disease. It's not, but we do need support to navigate it as well as we can, for sure.
And let's talk about that support, because it's quite often that we'll head off to the GP, and possibly hormone replacement therapy would tend to be the usual thing that is prescribed. In an ideal world, what would you like to see happen, and what kind of support would you like to see women get?
Oh, I'm laughing because in an ideal world, we would have an entire world that actually supports women through their entire reproductive years, because we are cyclical beasts, and our energy, our cognitive function, our mood, all of these things change week to week to week in our 4-week cycle, and the world is not set up for that. The world is set up for a very linear, same day in, day out kind of person. So,
we move with the tides, right?
That's right. Let's kind of dismantle the patriarchy, and that would be the best thing for women in general, let alone at this stage of life. But setting that aside, because that's a pretty big task, I think hormone replacement therapy has come an awfully long way. And, there are benefits to taking hormone replacement therapy. Not everyone can, not everyone will want to, but most of the time, I think about 80% of women who are able to take it will benefit from it. So it's definitely the first line of kind of intervention that the British Menopause Society, Australasian, I think even the North American, like all of the societies that look at this stuff will say that's the first line of treatment. The interesting thing, or the thing I think women need to understand about that, though, is that there are some women who will say it's life-changing. There are some women who will say it's just every symptom I had is now gone. The majority of women will far more likely talk about it helping, but still having some degree of symptoms. And this is where other approaches can be really, really helpful, I think, which is why All About Her is actually probably more focused on providing allied health services rather than medical and GP-oriented services. There are some amazing GPs out there who are menopause informed. They themselves, though, will say that I don't know what the percentage is, but they would acknowledge that the vast majority of GPs are not menopause informed. They get 1 hour at best menopause education in their training. So they're making very big efforts to change that. But, in addition to that, some of the symptoms that we have will still need other assistance. So, just going to the straight to the kind of tough conversations or the taboo conversations, there's this thing called genitourinary syndrome of menopause. So that's when we have, dry vagina, vaginal atrophy, the terrible kind of phrases that we come up with. It can really affect how our bladder functions. We can get UTIs, issues with incontinence and things like that because of how the thinning of the walls of the vagina. That really needs not just kind of perhaps vaginal estrogen, but it might be where you need a pelvic floor specialist to be supporting you in helping manage that, if not overcoming that. Nutrition is a huge issue. So we need nutritionists involved, and mood as well. When we've got the psychological stuff going on, then therapists, psychologists, and those kinds of people are really, really important. So not everything, unfortunately, MHT is fabulous, but it's not often a magic bullet, which people think it is. And I guess, I also like to tell people that we're not just, we don't live in a vacuum. We bring our life to this stage of life and our current circumstances. And so MHT is amazing, but it's not going to fix your shitty marriage. It's not going to improve your self-esteem. It's not going to suddenly provide you with endless motivation to, go and eat well and exercise well if you're not already doing that. And so there are things that we need, some other services, some other approaches that we need to take this holistic perspective on how we manage this stage of life and our well-being, really.
At what stage should women sort of think about being honest with themselves that there might be something that they need help with? What sort of, at what level of impact that it could be having on your life could be a good trigger to say, hey, I probably should go and get some advice, start working on what I can do sort of from a psychological support point of view.
Okay, from psychological support. Yeah, I mean, I think once you're saying to yourself quite regularly those things that I said before, like, I don't know who I am anymore, and I'm, biting people's heads off and then spending a lot of time having to apologize. And that's not like, it's not like me to be so irritable all the time. I think anxiety, you know, when you start finding that either your mood is so low or your anxiety is so high that you're really shrinking your life, you know, because it's just easier to stay home than to, you know, go out and be anxious, or stay home because, as I said, your mood's low and you just don't want to be around people because you're not feeling good about yourself. I think they're definitely the times that people can go and get support. And, you know, it's not a quick process, but most of the time things in life aren't, are they? You know, they take a bit of kind of persistence. And one of the things that's also going on that the research is starting to show, and that really isn't talked about, and as a psych it's a bit frustrating, is that you know, it's a significant psychological developmental stage. So we have developmental stage throughout our whole lifespan. One of the ones we can often think about and groan about often is adolescence. You know, and funnily enough, perimenopause is often being referred to as reverse puberty. When that phrase is made, they're often just referring to the hormonal fluctuations. But from a psychological perspective, we know that perimenopausal women in particular are wrestling with their identity, they're wrestling with the changes in their body, they're wanting more autonomy, they're wanting more independence, and they're really kind of reflecting on their values. And all of these things are also the developmental tasks of adolescence. These are all the things that adolescents are supposed to be grappling with and working through. So the current thinking is that the psychological milestones, these things are really, really important for us to grapple with. And if we do that successfully, we're setting ourselves up best for a happy, healthy, you know, kind of confident old age. So we really need to kind of harness this stuff.
Absolutely. It's just one of those things that, you know, I certainly know when I haven't been quite right and had to sort of be very honest with myself and my husband and say, look, I think I need to go and, you know, get some help, you know, get my, have my little bit of time with my psych, and that's good, you know, and that's been, you know, wonderful to be able to get over sort of some of those times where I've needed those strategies in place, along with, you know, the health advice of my own GP and all those sorts of things. So it's absolutely important. So if there's anyone listening that's sort of thinking this is something that I probably have been putting off, you know, don't put it off. It's really important to get onto it. The sooner the better. But tell me all about Her. Is a membership-based organisation, but it's a membership organisation for the allied health. So tell us about this membership group and how that came about, and why did you bring together this group, a community? Why are you building the community?
Yeah. So I guess, as I said, the seed was sown as to, you know, trying to make it easier for women out there to be able to find health practitioners across different disciplines who had the specialist knowledge of the menopause space as well. And so, you know, I had to find them, which took a bit of effort. And initially I was finding them from a market research kind of perspective. And it was really the market research that changed the business model that I implemented, because initially it was like, well, how is this business going to run? You know, I was quite clear. This is my, I guess, value shifting and priority shifting at this stage of my life. I just sold, you know, my group private practice of 18 years. I didn't want more employees. I didn't want subcontractors. I didn't want those kinds of things. So I had to come up with a different model to be able to basically run the business. And as I said, the feedback that I got from the practitioners when I spoke to them about, well, what do I need to provide you with to attract you to All About Her? They were very clear. They wanted a community, not surprising, women love community. So they wanted a community of diverse health disciplines. They didn't want it just their own health profession. They wanted varied health professions. They definitely wanted ongoing training in this particular area of menopause, again, from diverse health professionals, because they wanted to have a holistic understanding of menopause, even if they were only delivering one type of health kind of profession. They wanted to be supported in, I guess, as well, being able to see their ideal client. They were all wanting to see and work with perimenopausal, menopausal women. And as small business owners and health practitioners aren't necessarily naturally great business people, brilliant at what they do clinically typically, but not necessarily great business people. So they wanted to be supported and basically be helped to have referrals for their ideal client and things. They were not clear about how to brand themselves, market themselves, all those bits and pieces. So there were lots of elements of their personal. They wanted the personal support, they wanted the professional development support, and they wanted the business support. And so essentially it was like, okay, this needs to be a membership model for the professionals where we provide those things. So that's essentially how it came about. We only launched in March this year. We're definitely still looking for more health practitioners to join our team. I really, really want the diverse range of health disciplines represented. I don't necessarily want to be, a few people have kind of mentioned, oh, this is like Health Engine for menopause. And I mean, Health Engine has been a phenomenal success. It's just ridiculous. And for me, that's just kind of the principle of Health Engine, which is connecting patients to doctors. Yes, it has All About Her has that as one of the things that I want to be able to achieve, both for the client community as well as the health professionals. But it's way bigger than that in terms of, or it's about more than that. It's more than just referrals, as I have mentioned.
So it's really an incredible gap in the market that you've been able to find, to be honest. I can remember when I was looking for support around a hip issue, that I had a hip and a knee issue, and I have a very good GP here at View Street who put me onto a women's physio. And in fact, I should need to connect her to your community, because these are the perimenopause and menopause informed health practitioners that are exactly. I was lucky, and because I mentioned it to some of my girlfriends and they'd never heard of a women's physio that understand women's health, and the whole point about, me being now menopausal or postmenopausal actually, and that, the lining of my uterus was thinner, and that everything's sort of sagging and bagging down there. And I, a lot of it was really around exercise and building up those muscles, which ended up fixing my hip and my knee. And it was extraordinary, because it was, who would have thought? There you go. There, I was thinking before that I'd got been somewhere else to a different physio, and they'd had a cortisone injection in my hip and all this sort of stuff, and it was just all quite wrong. So it just goes to show that that informed, holistic view of a woman through the various stages of her life are so important. And having a community where they could potentially be looking after all aspects, and even you've got your nutritionist, you've got your psych, you've got your GP, you've got your physio, you've got everyone that's sort of all on the same page looking out for you as a woman in your entirety. So women will be able to go to All About Her and find those medical practitioners and allied health professionals that understand and are fully and being continuously educated. That's the other thing I love, Kirstin, about your community model, and that's where it is very different to Health Engine type, just matching people. You're actually, as new research is coming out, as more information's coming forward, as a community, you've got the advocacy and the ability to lobby government for better support. So you're changing the systemic issues that are barriers to us to be able to succeed in life through all the wonderful and exciting challenges we have. I'll never forget my mum, God bless her. But she said to me before she died, she said, I was so excited at the idea of becoming menopausal and not having to worry about having a baby, when I have sex, being the girl that she was. And she said, I felt so ripped off. And all my girlfriends said the same things. We felt so ripped off because then we lost our libido.
Exactly. And so we've got clinical sexologists, and I mean, this is where the pelvic physios are really helpful as well in that particular area. And I'm very keen to find exercise physiologists, because the way we need to support our physical health, we really need to be growing muscles. We really need to be strengthening our bones. We really need to be feeding our bodies in very particular ways. And I mean, these are all things I've learned from my members. You know, they're not my areas of expertise, but that's what I love, is that I can learn so much and I can help direct people to the other professionals, you know, that are part of the community and beyond. I've got great relationships with menopause-informed GPs as well. So sometimes we're the first port of call, to be honest. Sometimes it's the psych who has spent a lot of time with someone, because that's just how we work. We're seeing people out for hours, you know, at a time. And it's us that are identifying that they might be peri, and they might have said to me, or often say to me, oh, my GP dismissed that, said I was too young. Well, I can help them find a menopause-informed GP to be able to work with. And so these are the things that I really love about her, that we can help people connect with the people that can support them. And that changes. And if you're kind of thinking this stage of life, you know, 13, 14 years it can be up to, the symptoms evolve. And that's the other thing people don't realize, is what you might start with in terms of the challenges can change and will likely change over the years, which is why you need different health professionals to be able to connect with over that period of time.
Well, it's an extraordinary vision. And not what I love about you always, Kirstin, is that when you get an idea and you've worked it out and you really have decided this is where you're going to throw your effort and your energy and your enthusiasm, you always make it happen. And here it is. You're only so fresh off the block, and you've already got such an incredible community that you've built and continuing to build. So what do you want to happen from now for people that might be listening? What would you like them to be doing?
I would definitely like them to be talking. If they are health professionals, I'd love them to be reaching out to me if they are interested and in the area of menopause. And they don't really have to know a lot, because we'll teach them, you know. And so definitely a wide range of health professionals either joining, booking in to have a chat with me. That would be amazing, because the demand is increasing, and we are already at a stage, like my books are closed. I won't be able to take on any more people myself until, I don't know, March next year at the best. And that's happening more and more and more. So we do need more members. I don't want to be massive, because we'll lose that personal touch of community and training. But we've got a long way to go before we get to what I have in my mind. And in my mind, for example, is something like at least 10 practitioners in every single discipline. Health discipline that I've mentioned, and there's about 10. So we're looking ideally at about 100 members, so that we can set up also hubs for professional support amongst each kind of group of people. And there's lots of really cool things on the cards, but members, that's what we're looking for. Referrals always, of course. It definitely attracts members when I can say we've got referrals coming out of our ears for your particular profession. So all of that would be great. Talk about us to people. Tell your friend who's a health professional to give me a buzz.
Absolutely. I think it's just such a wonderful enterprise and a great idea. Certainly needed. There's a gap in the market. And I think you've really hit the nail on the head. You know, the more we can be educated and to understand, you know, how to support women through our various stages of our lives, to be productive, to be happy and healthy, and to flourish. That's just a wonderful purpose in life. Kirstin, any final words before we finish off today?
Probably the thing that just popped into my head, it's a bit random, but is also that what I haven't mentioned is a lot of our practitioners are also across things like PCOS, endometriosis, PMDD. You know, I really see the big vision, which I've only said to one other person, and now I'm telling you and whoever's listening, is actually to grow all about her so that it's more around women's health in general. Particularly in that hormonally driven health stuff. I think there's a lot of scope and there's a heck of a lot of overlap. So if you're someone who's thinking I'm perimenopausal, but I've got these additional health issues like PMDD, PCOS, whatever, that does not exclude you by any means from coming to see us, whatever practitioner you want to choose. So yeah, that's my final thought. Big visions, I know, crazy, but yeah, let's make it happen.
Well, it's so important. I mean, let's face it, from the minute our bodies start to prepare for our periods, you know, we're becoming a woman. And from that time onwards, we move from being that little girl to being the woman that is then juggling all those different changes through our lives, and our hormones actually racing through whatever might be going on in our lives at whatever stage it might be, you know, or whether or not we have children or don't have children through that also impacts as well. Yeah. So thank you so much, Kirstin, and to all those who are listening to our live stream or those catching up who are listening on your favourite podcast channel. Thank you for tuning in. We would love to continue the conversation. We'll bring you back again after Christmas and hear how it's all going. For those of you who are health practitioners or GPs or anywhere in that health system, we want you to become informed, and we want you to understand what it is so you can help women be successful at work and in life. So connecting with Kirstin. For those of you who are women going through this, if something's come up for you today, please reach out, jump onto All About Her and be connected to someone who can help you through this. Kirstin, you're so inspirational. I've loved everything about you since the moment I first met you. And I remember reading Conscious Mother, which was the book that you produced many years ago now. And now you're walking us through this next stage of our lives. And it's really, you certainly are dedicated. And it's just great to hear that you're going to have a healthcare squad that's going to transform the landscape for Australian women impacted by menopause. Big vision, I love it, and I'm very excited that you've put your genius and your passion into establishing All About Her, the Centre for Menopause. Got a feeling it's going to be all about her, the Centre for Her.
Exactly, the Centre for Women's Hormonal Health. Yes, I think
I love it. I love it. So thank you so much for being on the show, and we'll have you again after Christmas.
Wonderful. Thanks so much.
You have been listening to the Business Women Australia podcast show. We hope you've enjoyed today's episode and gained some valuable insights to empower you on your journey. Don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe to stay updated in our latest episodes. And if you're not already a member of Business Women Australia, what are you waiting for? Head to our website today and join so that you can connect with a thriving community of inspiring women across Australia. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next episode.